Ahead of and across the US Grand Prix weekend, there was chatter of a potential third US race joining the Formula One calendar, with the city of Las Vegas being identified as a location for this race despite its rather poor history with Formula One. So, on that deeply unfortunate note, I came up with a list of 5 good racetracks located in the United States that I'd like to see Formula One visit instead of going back to Las Vegas. Kicking things off at number 1, I'll start with my all-time favorite American track, Watkins Glen International. Located in upstate New York, it's also known simply as the Glen. Dotted with bank corners, elevation changes, and high-speed sections, the Glen easily reminds one of Spa. And while the Glen is used mainly by NASCAR and sports cars today, Formula One is no stranger to the Glen, with the track hosting the US Grand Prix 20 times between 1961 to 1980. Today, the track has 4 layouts centered around 2 main configurations, with both featuring the option to run the inner loop bus stop chicane located towards the end of the back straight. However, for this video, we'll focus exclusively on the inner loop Grand Prix circuit, which I feel is the ideal configuration for Formula One. Coming in at 5.5 kilometers or 3.45 miles and featuring a total of 11 turns, this is effectively the same layout F1 used between 1971 to 1974, just with the addition of the inner loop chicane. And if you ask me, overtaking won't be too much of a challenge on this layout. The bank corners across the track will provide a good number of passing points, while the inner loop chicane adds 2 additional overtaking points. So, if F1 ever returns, and should the 2022 aero changes work as intended, this layout should deliver a treat for the fans. And with that, here's a lap of the track. For number 2, we have Road America, located near the shores of Elkhart Lake in Wisconsin. The track is also known as America's National Park of Speed. Used mainly by IndyCar, NASCAR, and sports cars, the track has never graced the Formula One calendar, but it's another American track that has characteristics typically found on certain European tracks which F1 fans are familiar with. Ex-F1 driver Max Chilton compared the track to Spa in 2016 while speaking to IndyCar media, though in a more recent context, a comparison with the Algarve International Circuit is perhaps a bit more appropriate. One of the longest circuits in America, the Grand Prix course is a punishing track that tests all aspects of a car. Being spread out across 6.5 kilometers or 4.05 miles and containing 14 turns, it's a very fast and flowing circuit containing a mix of corner types and straights plus elevation changes. Quite interestingly, it's one of the very few tracks in the world that has managed to maintain its original layout dating back all the way to 1955, giving the track an old school charm and character that's quickly becoming a rarity in this era of tilkodromes. And with that, let's take a lap of the roller coaster that is Road America. For number 3, we have Road Atlanta, which isn't exactly near Atlanta despite its name. In reality, it's located just outside the town of Braselton, over 40 miles outside of Atlanta. Used mainly by sports cars, Road Atlanta stands out as the only track on this list without significant open-wheel history. Neither F1 nor IndyCar has ever raced here, with Indy Lights and Formula Regional Americas being the highest open-wheel series to ever grace the track. The 2.54-mile lap, at just under 4.1 kilometers in length, is a literal roller coaster of a racetrack. All 14 turns incorporate an element of elevation change, and even the straights aren't spared. The start-finish straight is literally the only patch of track that can be remotely described as flat. And with that, here's a lap of Road Atlanta. For number 4, we have the Long Beach Street Circuit, which unlike Road Atlanta is actually located within its namesake city of Long Beach. Today, the Long Beach Street Circuit is synonymous with IndyCar and sports cars, with both categories running the 11-turn track measuring in at 1.97 miles or 3.167 kilometers once a year. However, before IndyCar first lined up on Shoreline Drive in 1984, the streets of Long Beach played host to Formula One, hosting the United States Grand Prix West 8 times between 1976 to 1983. Back then, it was also considered to be one of the best races on the calendar too, which probably surprises most F1 fans today, since most tend to groan whenever they hear rumors of a street circuit joining the calendar. But Long Beach is different, as it actually manages to produce some decent racing with actual on-track overtakes taking place in the race. And yes, you're probably going to tell me, but IndyCar and Formula One aren't directly comparable, and you're absolutely correct. But with the 2022 rule set, Formula One is moving in the same direction as IndyCar arrow-wise. And if the 2022 rule set works as planned, we could see much closer racing like the kind seen in IndyCar today, which would improve the racing at the wider street circuits, making a track like Long Beach work as a race venue instead of being a parade ground. And with that, here's a lap of Long Beach. Now, of course, I couldn't be making a video titled 5 US tracks F1 should visit without including one of the most iconic racetracks in the United States. So, lastly, but certainly not least, we have Laguna Seca. Like Road America and Road Atlanta, Formula One has never raced in Laguna Seca, and the track is used mostly by sports cars and IndyCar today, though Formula One cars have run on the track previously, and at one point it nearly hosted the United States Grand Prix. Unfortunately, as we all know, it lost out to a city in Arizona called Phoenix, which then gave us one of the worst F1 tracks of all time. But back to Laguna Seca, like many of the other tracks on this list, the 11-turn 3.6km or 2.24 mile circuit is jam-packed with elevation changes. And I'll admit, the Laguna Seca isn't the widest circuit in America, which means that overtaking could be limited to select spots on the circuit, such as the Andretti hairpin, the infamous corkscrew, and turn 4. However, as IndyCar has shown, races there are by no means a snooze fest, and as with Long Beach, the 2022 aero regulations could certainly make a race held in Laguna Seca an interesting one to watch. And with that, here's a lap of Laguna Seca. So, there's the 5 US tracks that I'd like to see Formula One visit instead of going back to Las Vegas. It wasn't easy coming up with this list, and the reality is that all of these tracks can't just be slotted directly into the Formula One calendar. The FIA has a circuit grading system, and all tracks seeking to join the calendar must achieve Grade 1 status to hold an F1 race, and unfortunately, all of the tracks listed here are Grade 2 tracks and simply just don't make the cut. All of these tracks will need to construct a permanent pit facility, including garages, which will cost money. And to top it off, many of these tracks will also require other substantial modifications too. For example, in the case of Watkins Glen, the track will need to lose its iconic blue Armco barriers, and sections of the beautiful hilly landscape will need to be excavated to create additional runoff area. While at Long Beach, the fountain will need to be bypassed or removed. With that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, drop a like, share or subscribe if you like this video, and do feel free to share your top 5 American tracks that you would like to see in F1, as well as your comments on this video. And with that, I'll see you next time.